Welcome to The Plant Report, a radio show that educates about the green world one plant at a time. The Plant Report is a new educational resource about plants, herbal medicine, ethnobotany, and the human-plant relationship. Listen to our podcast, read our blog, watch our videos, and learn from experts and the plants. The Plant Report is a project of Sustainable World Radio and is hosted by Jill Cloutier. Thanks for listening to The Plant Report because every plant has a story. So I'm here at the Heirloom Expo with Katrina Blair, my internet friend, who we did the interview for Sustainable World Radio last year. And Katrina's wearing these really cool shoes made with what plant?
It's called dogbane. It's also called Indian hemp. And it's a really fun plant that creates fiber. And so there's some fun techniques of just kind of breaking it up into little pieces and then pulling off the woody pieces. And then what's left is the fiber, and it's really strong. And then a simple weave makes it a great twine or rope or string, so I've been making shoes with it.
And what's on the bottom? Your
sole?
It's
just leather, yeah, which feels good on the feet.
That's so cool. That's great. You're wearing plants. We all are.
Right.
It's just we forget. So we're going to be talking about a plant today, which I think is close to your heart, thistles. Can you share with listeners the Latin name of this plant and then maybe give us a few of the common names?
Okay. Yeah, so Carduus nutans is one name for the musk thistle, and then Circisium arvensis is another name for Canadian thistle. So there's a lot of different kinds of thistles. All the thistles are edible, and there's an incredible amount of use, and I can go into them.
Before we get going, where are thistles located? Are they pretty much worldwide?
They are worldwide, yeah. They live on every continent, except for maybe Antarctica, which only has 4 flowering plant species so far. But very close to Antarctica, not far on some of the surrounding islands, there's thistles there too. So really everywhere on the planet, thistles are indigenous to planet Earth.
And thistles have a bad reputation in many circles, and I think your book has really helped to talk about some of the benefits of thistles. So maybe let's just start talking about why do you love thistles?
Well, I appreciate thistles because they grow on my farm, and really anything that grows wherever I live I appreciate because it has such value to thistles are one of the best pollinating for bees. They provide so much nectar and pollen, and it's incredible how vast the bees are. I'll go into a little side story, but some people don't like thistles because it's actually on the noxious weed list on most states, different varieties of thistles. So a lot of people feel, especially if they own a large tract of land, that they have to spray or do something to,
keep them in check.
Keep them in check and apply with these laws. So we have an organization that's through our nonprofit, Turtle Lake Refuge, called Bee Happy Lands. And in this project, we go out and we manually harvest the thistles or any of the plants that they want off their land. And we do it in a real low-impact way. So we manually remove them, which is to us called harvesting, because we'll actually use these plants. We don't just throw them away or compost them. We actually use them as a resource in addition to harvesting them. So we'll harvest them, and then we sprinkle native seeds, anyway, the plants that the people want on the land, onto the land, and then we put compost and mulch down with the seeds, and then we apply this weed remedy, which I can talk to more about. But there was one place where there was 8 acres of solid thistle, like you could not even walk because it was so prickly. So we didn't even attempt to weed them in a way because we used other methods. We overseeded, and we did this weed remedy spray, which is just water and the ash of the roots and the seeds of the plants.
Of the thistle plants.
Of the thistle plants, which communicates to the land that, this land is stabilized and doesn't need these pioneer plants so much anymore. So that's what we're doing, is we're just helping stabilize the land so that the natural succession of plants happens quicker. But anyway, on this 8 acres of solid thistle, it was a bee haven. There were so many thousands and thousands of honeybees here. And to me, and there were birds and wildlife. There was deer walking by eating the thistles. And to me, it was like a wildlife sanctuary because it was too prickly for any humans to hang out there. But the wildlife loved it.
I always think of plants like that and mosquitoes sometimes as nature's bodyguards.
Exactly, yeah, boundaries, right? The thistle creates boundaries. But I really appreciate thistle because, one, the entire plant is edible. And 2, it's incredibly medicinal. So it's a food and a medicine. So thistles regenerate liver cells. It's one of the best plants for rebuilding the strength and health of our liver. And of course, being in the 21st century, as human beings, we all need healthy livers because we're all exposed to so many different strange chemicals and toxins as we live. So, just dive into some of the edible properties of thistle. We could start with the root.
Yeah, who knew that thistle was edible?
Yeah, and of course, and it's fun. The entire thing is edible, and then there's just ways in which you want to eat it so you don't get pricked.
You don't want to go out and just take a big mouthful of raw thistle?
Deers figured it out. They have much tougher lips than us. But the root, we like to harvest the roots, and then we make a chai tea with the root. We just blend the roots up with fresh ginger and all the chai spices and a little cashew honey and vanilla. Blend it up with water and strain it. And serve it on ice, and it's incredible. We actually sell this at the Durango Farmers Market, and it sells out every Saturday. And it's fun. When you start ingesting thistle, you become more like thistle in its resiliency and vitality, and it also creates good boundaries for knowing, how much we can give and when it's beyond our limit, and so it keeps us safe on a personal level. So the thistle root is also a vegetable, so you could cook it up like a potato or...
What does it taste like?
It's mild. It's not bitter. The whole plant of thistle is generally not bitter. It's once the roots kind of where the extra carbohydrates are located and some of the good mineral nutrition, but then the roots draw up those minerals right into the green leaves, and then the green leaves are a delicious green juice. And really one of the more alkaline greens that you can bring into the body. So you can pick the thistle leaves either carefully on the back rib, doesn't have spines, and you can put them in your blender. You can also use gloves or scissors or something, but maybe a handful of green leaves, put into a blender, fill the blender up with about 3/4 full of water, and add an apple and some lemon, and blend it up and strain it. And then all the prickles get strained out, and you've got this amazing alkaline juice that supports your liver, remineralizes your body, gives you chlorophyll and all the enzymes.
And it's free food because really the thistles are probably growing on your property anyway.
Well, and that's the fun thing. The county weed manager came out to our farm, Turtle Lake Refuge, and as we were applying for a permit for an organic farm school, and we had to go through this process. And so he was like, so what's your weed control? And we said, well, we eat them, sell them at the farmer's market. We use them in our recipes. It completely worked. We passed us off and we got to continue on.
That is so great. So you're utilizing something that usually would just be seen as a nuisance.
And that is the fun part, when something is a problem, when we shift our perspective, when we start to learn more deeply its value and why is it here? Why did nature place it? Because remember, it's wild, so it chose to grow exactly where it is. And it's a little odd that we might think that it doesn't belong because some greater force out there is working this symphony of life, and these thistles are growing often exactly where they're needed in the earth because usually there's a disturbance of the soil or the earth or compaction, and so these thistle roots break up that compaction and they aerate the soil, and then year after composting they remineralize and rebuild the topsoil and regenerate the land. So we're getting this incredible food. So then after the leaves it shoots up into a stalk right before it flowers, and that's actually the best time to harvest the stalk, is before flowering. And I just either carefully with my hands, or if I have a knife, I peel off all the leaves of the stalk, peel off the prickles, and then peel it back a little bit because the outer part is a little fibrous, but the inner part is so juicy and tender and sweet. It's better than a celery by far. Like, it's so sweet.
That's so great. And are there certain thistles that are more appetizing than others?
Musk Thistle is my favorite, and that's the Carduus nutans. That's actually... It's a biannual plant, so after it goes to flower, it'll go to seed, and then it dies, and then reseeds into the first year and, rosette of leaves. But it's fun. Once the stalk goes to flower, well, of course, there's the little artichoke heart in every thistle, and that's a complete edible food, too. If you steamed it, you just get this tiny little artichoke heart in every thistle.
Who knew? So are there any thistles that you should not eat?
There might be, and I personally haven't met them to know yet, so I can't say definitely. I think there's so many different varieties of thistles, and all of them have different tastes, and they're growing in different places. So you have to use your own intuition and your own body to check in. Is this thistle want me to eat it right now? Do I want to eat this thistle in particular? And so you start small by just taking a bite and maybe just not even swallowing it yet, but just holding it in your mouth and getting a sense of the flavor. And your body's so smart. The more we tune into it and listen to it, the more communication it gives us. And the plants give us that communication too. So it's up to each person to decide what's good for them. But in my situation, there haven't been thistles yet that I haven't enjoyed. So, yeah.
Are you actually growing them, or are you just harvesting the wild thistles?
That's what's so fun about the wild, is it takes so much less work. So no, I'm not planting them. They're just growing just fine on their own.
You don't have a thistle crop. Well, you do. But...
I do, but I didn't have to plant it. I only have to harvest it. I don't have to weed it, water it, anything. It's just when the right prime time, that's when I show up and harvest them. And we have a wild food CSA at Turtle Lake Refuge, and so we use all parts of the thistle in our CSA. We give them roots, we make them chai tea, we give them thistle stalks, we make them green juice, we even give them thistle seeds to grind up for their flour or for their cereal or use in their rice. You can cook it, or we even make thistle milk out of the seeds.
So you can actually make flour too out of the seeds?
Yes, you can.
How many do you need?
When it's wild food, they're really potent. And so the fun thing is, like if you think of a genetically modified or even just hybridized wheat, they're huge, and we intend to eat a lot more of it because it's actually mineral deficient. But when you take a wild seed, either a wild grass seed or a wild thistle seed or any of the wild seeds, and integrate that into our food, we just, a handful would add so much more nutrition to whatever recipe you're working with. It's like an integration at this point of adding it. And even making milk, I would use like a handful of thistle seeds mixed in with maybe sunflower seeds or almonds to make the milk.
Well, so you utilize all parts of the plant.
Even the flowers, and the flowers are really sweet. That's where all the nectar and pollen is. And so when I'm out gardening, I'll just take a pinch of the flower. And when you pick a thistle flower, you've got the purple part on top and then the white fluff down below. And I'll put it into my mouth. And for a second, you have to get past like the white fluff. But it turns into chewing gum. And it's the sweet nectar comes out and it just chews on forever.
And how did you discover that thistles were edible?
I think... I can't remember not knowing that thistles were not, but many things happen sort of from multi-sources, probably a lot of experimentation and just tasting and maybe some research too. I mean, I started studying plants. I fell in love with plants when I was 11, so it just became a language that I grew up with. And then I did a lot of study in college on wild edible plants. That was my whole senior project. So, yeah, a lot of sources, books, and the plants themselves.
That's so great. So is there anything else you want people to know about thistles?
Yeah, so one really fun thing we're doing with thistles, because we're harvesting a lot of thistles on people's land to help them get rid of it, to apply to the county standards of weeds, we end up having bags and bags of thistles because we actually remove a lot of the thistle heads and help it not go to seed and that sort of thing. So we had like probably 20 bags, big, huge trash bags full of these thistles that I didn't know what to do with. It would be sacrilege to throw them away, and I wasn't sure I wanted to throw them in my compost pile, all of it. But then I just learned thistle makes a fantastic substrate to grow oyster mushrooms on. So that's what we're doing. Just before I came out here to do this interview with you, I had all these thistles in the bags, and I put them in water. So I fermented them for about, a week, ended up. So I just put them in water in coolers and buckets and tubs, and I had like probably 8 tubs, soaked them all in water for a week. And then, of course, they got really ripe and stinky. And I used a pitchfork to put them out on screens to dry them out. And then I ended up using that water. We are doing some micro-remediation for my neighbor. He uses herbicides as a business. And so we ended up actually using oyster mushrooms as micro-remediation. We dug a trench and inoculated it with the moisture mushrooms, which helps clean up the residues of pesticides and herbicides and petrochemicals. Anyway, so after I took the thistle stalks out of the fermented water and dried them out just a little bit, then I inoculated them with a lot of oyster mycelium and packed it again into this 55-gallon trash bin, which I poked holes in and put a weight on and covered it with plastic on the top. And anyway, so what's fun is that rather than just using some straw or some other kind of substrate, thistle stalks make a great growing material for mushrooms.
That is amazing. So you're actually using it to grow something that's going to remediate the property next door. Incredible. Yeah. Kind of like the hay bales here, but you didn't have to go buy it.
Didn't have to buy it. And, with hay, it's questionable. They use a lot of herbicides they try to make it a weed-free hay. And unfortunately, that means pesticide-laden. It's nice to use a wild substrate that is clean and integrated with the environment.
That's so cool. And so where can people find you online to learn more about thistles and many of the other plants that you advocate for?
Great. So turtlelakerefuge.org is our website, and we offer wild plant permaculture classes and retreats and plant retreats and all sorts of things.
In your book?
And I do have a book called The Wild Wisdom of Weeds, and that came out in 2014, and then an earlier book, which is called Local Wildlife, Turtle Lake Refuge's Recipes for Living Deep. And that's a recipe book and stories of our nonprofit and kind of our mission of being caretakers of the land.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, too.
Thanks for listening to The Plant Report. The Plant Report is produced by Jill Cloutier and is a project of Sustainable World Radio. For more podcasts about plants, permaculture, and ecology, visit our website, sustainableworldradio.com, and you can also find us on iTunes, Facebook, and Twitter. The Plant Report is created for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any health condition. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to thank the plants for everything they do.